Welcome back to another Ask Me Anything video. As a reminder, guys, I'm going to be doing this once a month. So if you have any questions that come up in regards to sales, leadership, organizational structure, and you need answers, drop them in the comments below and make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date when I answer those questions. So today I'm going to be going over some of the most common questions that I've been getting in the last month or so. Some of these are coming from my clients. Some of them are coming from my inbox, my email, my DMs. So let's go ahead and get into it. One of the questions I'm getting over and over again, especially in times like right now, are about profitability, evaluating your P&L, and making sure that your profit margins are in check for where your business is. Now, I'm not going to speak to what your specific profit margins should be because I don't know your business. There's a ton of different models out there, but it's safe to say that if you're a business owner right now and we're in the market that we're in, everybody's chasing profitability and, they're chasing getting that number as high as they possibly can without losing something within their system. So one of my favorite activities to do with anybody when it's coming down to evaluating profitability is we first have to look at all of our expenses. And this is actually an activity that my mentor Jeff shared with me, and he calls this the ABC financial audit. And so what Jeff asks us to do is to take all of the recurring expenses in the business. So I'm not talking about like, oh, you had lunch with a colleague a week ago. I'm talking about everything that is set up to auto renew on your credit card, a recurring payment that you know that you have to make, whether it's every single month, every quarter, every year, doesn't matter. But these are essentially what you would call your business expenses. And so we want to list all of them out. It could be your car payment if you have one. It could be gas. It could be your rent, your office space. It could be your printer, your internet. It could be any licensing fees. It could also be, if you're in real estate, it could be leads. It could be a transaction coordinator. It could be staff. It could be anything that you need to continue the business on the way that you're doing it. And so what he encourages everybody to do is to list all of those things out in a list, right? My favorite is a spreadsheet. You can do it in a spreadsheet just because it's easier to tweak and manipulate. And then he tells us to assign letter A, letter B, or letter C to every single thing in this spreadsheet. And I'll explain to you what A, B, and C means. So A is something that he considers like non-negotiable. Like this is an expense you absolutely have to do business. So in real estate, what that is like our board dues, our licensing fees, whatever that like we need to pay to actually have a real estate license. For others in real estate, it's going to be your cost or your split to your brokerage, right? Like that in most cases is pretty non-negotiable. It's going to be any royalty fees that you have, right? You should have an idea of what those A expenses are. And then, I'm going to go to category C really quick. I'll circle back to B, but category C is any expenses that you notice on your card that's happening at a recurring basis, but maybe you guys don't use it, or maybe you tried it once and then you forgot that it was set up to auto renew, right? Like maybe you signed up for that one thing and it was $7.99 a month, which doesn't seem like a lot, but right, like those little things erode at your P&L and you never use it, so now you're going to cancel it, right? And so the C category is everything that you are routinely spending money on that is not generating an ROI, you aren't using it, and you actually just want to get rid of. So you have your A category, the things you cannot live without. You have your C category, the things you're paying for that you kind of forgot that you had, or the things you're paying for that are giving no ROI and you want to do without. And then we have this like fat category in the middle, which is our B category. The B category are, it's really kind of a flexible category, right? And the way that I explain this to clients is everything in your B category is either an expense you cannot justify or an invaluable investment. Right? Now, it's either an expense you can't justify or it's an invaluable investment. So the task with everything that you assign the letter B to is within a couple weeks, once you've played around with the system, once you've played around with what's in that category, you are tasked to move everything that's a B either over to A, meaning, okay, gosh, now that I've dialed in this system, I cannot live without it, we're keeping it. Or if we haven't found a way to get the ROI out of that we need to, we move it to a C. So I'm gonna give you one of the most common examples of this. I'll give you two actually. First one in real estate are paid internet leads. So all the time my coaching clients ask me, Kate, what is the best paid internet lead source? And depending on the season, depending on, their spend, depending on their location, there's like slightly different answers to that question. One of the most common ones, I'll just lean on Zillow. That's like one of the most common paid internet lead sources that agents have. And it's very common that when we're looking at a P&L for an agent, when we come to that line item of paid leads, I'll get one of two responses. One of them could be, oh my gosh, a chunk of our business comes from Zillow, I cannot do without it. So then we move it to A. Or I'm paying for it, I sometimes get leads, I sometimes do deals, but gosh, it's so expensive, right? Now, when I'm having that conversation with them about their Zillow leads, the first question that I'm gonna ask them is, what system or process do we have around this expense to get the highest and best ROI out of the money we're spending? So before I decide, are we moving it to A or are we moving it to C, I have to ask, what system are we using to get the most juice out of this that we possibly can? Now, for the sake of internet leads, what that usually looks like is I'm asking them, what is your speed to lead? How quickly are you calling them? When you get them on the phone, what are you saying? How many times do you follow up, right? I'm really getting in the weeds on that paid lead and what's everything that they're doing to actually convert that lead. If they're doing everything under the sun, and as their coach, if I can't find anything that they should tweak or change about that approach, and it's still not giving them the ROI, then we're probably gonna move it to the C category and evaluate using that spend on something else. If they're already doing a lot for that source and they're getting deals from it, I'm gonna look at what we can do to make it more efficient and again, make it an undeniable expense for the business. And so either way, we're auditing everything we do in that B category to find out how to either make it more efficient and optimal for the goals we have for the business, or we look under the hood and say, hey, we've tried everything we can, the ROI for this just isn't here, it's time for us to move on from this. So one other example of this, of course, as we do this ABC activity, inevitably coaching or consulting, if you have an outside hire like myself that goes into your business and helps optimize it, that could be an expense, right? Or it could be an invaluable investment, right? And I always tell clients the same thing. Whether coaching is an expense or whether coaching is an invaluable investment depends on what you do with the information outside of coaching, right? In most of my consulting calls, they're anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes once a week. Occasionally, it'll be more frequent than that if we're working on a project with somebody. But if I only have 30 minutes a week with somebody and they have the rest of their work week to execute and they choose not to do anything between calls, I would fully expect them to not get a high ROI out of coaching. That being said, when we have clients that do even 50 to 75% of what we're asking them to do in those consult calls, usually their business will expand and grow to a level that makes the cost of consulting or coaching an absolute no-brainer. What this really comes down to is holding your B expenses, your category B expenses, extremely accountable, not only to the money that you're spending, but to the expected outcome from the money you're spending with that source. So anyway, there's a lot more we can go over as far as P&Ls go, as far as profit margins, but that's one area which would be an expense audit. We'll cover in a future video, other areas like cost of sale, split, some of those other topics within profitability. But for now, just start with mapping out your expenses and having an honest conversation with yourself on what's absolutely necessary, what you got to do without, and that messy middle there, that gray area, you got to go through with a fine-tooth comb and find out, can I make it undeniable or do I have to move it off the books? And then check what your profitability is after that activity. Okay, so one of the next questions I have is around a leader who has an agent who wants to leave their team unless the leader is willing to pay them more. So in my industry, what this means is typically if an agent is in a real estate organization or on a team, there's typically a split to the broker or to the team leader. Now, whether that's 80-20, 70-30, it could be as low as 40-60 or 50-50, depending on the value of the team. And so whenever we have an agent who's sitting across the desk from us asking for more money, first, we need to stop and identify what's going on here. Because if somebody is sitting across the desk from us asking for more money, it's actually a lagging indicator to what's gone on for the last 90 days, could be longer, but the last 90 days. And what they're essentially telling you is they're not seeing value in being in business with you. I'm not saying that you aren't valuable to be in business with. What I'm saying is they're not seeing value in being in business with you. So what do we do about that? the first thing we look at is what is your unique value proposition in this corner of the market that's different than everybody else out there. And so for those I coach and lead, one of the questions I ask them around developing a unique value proposition is the question of this. If all things are equal, right? Your experience in the business, what you offer to somebody, your location, your branding, if everything was the same and they're interviewing you and they're interviewing Bob down the street, why does somebody choose to work with you instead of Bob? What are all the things that you bring to the table or offer or cultivate in your environment that this person over here either can't or won't duplicate? What that means is if somebody says, well, we do trainings every Friday. Well, Bob can do trainings every Friday. So what specifically about your trainings is more important than what Bob's doing? Well, we help you with branding. Well, everybody helps you with branding. So what specifically are you going to do with branding that's different than Bob down the street? In fact, this is a perfect example. So with Glover Agency, which is the agency I'm affiliated with, we have a media room. That's where I'm actually recording with you guys today. That is a unique value proposition to the agents that are within our organization that other companies in our area don't yet have. Now, I said the word yet because what that means is we have to be willing to look at and audit our unique value proposition on a regular basis. When I say a regular basis, what I mean is like once a year, once every 12, 18, maybe 24 months. It depends in what space that you're operating in, but you have to be prepared to service the wants and the needs of your customer, which is going to be the agent who works for you or the employee who works for you or the independent contractor who works for you, with a unique value proposition that aligns with their goals. So again, we're sitting across the desk from somebody who says, hey, Kate, it's been great working with you, but if I'm gonna stay, I'm gonna need a higher split. Instead of jumping to the conversation around money, one of the first things I'm gonna do, assuming I know what my unique value proposition is I'm gonna take the value proposition out and I'm gonna go line by line with the person across the table and ask them how much they're digging into that value proposition. So it might look like this. Hey, Kate, I see here that we have weekly trainings and gosh, it's been 6 weeks since you've been to one. So how frequently are you plugging into the training we have? Oh, well, not very much. Okay, great. I see we have daily accountability and I know that Jeff says you're on sometimes and you're off other times. So how much are you digging into that accountability? Hey, we have a branding specialist on our team and they can help create your unique brand to reach more people that you want to work with. So have you done that yet? Now, typically what happens in these conversations is the agent is going to say, well, I've done some of this, but not a lot of this. And my job as the leader is to show them that the value that we have in the organization is going to help them hit their income goals, their time goals, their financial goals better by staying in this system. Now, that should be a challenge to us as leaders to continue to earn the right to be in business with top producers. Yet occasionally we sit across the desk from somebody who we give them all the tools we can and they don't really want to do anything with it, right? Like we've all heard the saying, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink, right? But what we're doing here is creating awareness around the fact that it's not the split, it's not the system, because guess what? If you take your same work ethic that you are using or not using here and drop it somewhere else, you're going to have the same results. And so what we're doing in that meeting is not to ignore what they're saying that they need more money. What we're trying to highlight here is that if they dig in and utilize the system that we've created and utilize the benefits, the coaching, the training, the accountability, they have the chance to do more production with us than they can on their own. Now, what I hope you're all hearing in this is that this is going to take the dedication, the care of a leader to actually show up for your people. Now, somebody left a comment on one of my Facebook videos before, or I'm sorry, one of my YouTube videos, and says, that's why it's important for a leader to actually care instead of being on the golf course. And I absolutely agree with that. When we're talking about leadership, I'm not talking about the corner office that somebody comes into every so often to shake hands and kiss babies. When I'm talking about leadership, I'm talking about somebody who is in the trenches with you, who's rolling up their sleeves and is walking next to you down the path towards your goals, right? I'm not talking about somebody who's an absentee leader. And so with that, we have to ask ourselves, are we as a leader prepared to deliver the unique value proposition that got this person in the door in the first place to help them hit their goals? If we can say yes to this, then this is an agent that I would imagine is somebody we can save and who will win in our system. Another question I get all the time, and this changes, right? Like this will change depending on the season, depending on what I'm personally interested in, but I get a lot of questions around what I'm doing to pour into myself and how I'm continuing to raise my leadership lid. So I'm a big fan of podcasts. Right now I'm consuming at an extreme level Ryan Holiday, The Daily Stoic. So I listen to this podcast almost every single day when I get ready. And if you're not familiar with Stoicism, there's plenty of Instagram pages out there, or you can follow Ryan Holiday. He has a really incredible book, 365 Days of Stoicism. You open it up, it has like a 1-page meditation, and it really talks about the power of understanding our edge of ownership, understanding where our emotions take us off course, and also it helps us unwrap and unravel our ego as we're going through life. And so I try to consume as much of that as I can because it really challenges how I think about things, and any piece of content that can make me stop in my tracks and think about how I've either handled something or a deeply rooted opinion that I have, that's content that I'm gonna come back to 100% of the time. And I haven't yet found anything from Ryan Holiday that hasn't done that. He's got a ton of books out there as well. So Ryan Holiday is what I'm consuming right now. Mel Robbins is a second favorite of mine. She's a little bit more like real, raw, kind of like real world advice, like coupled with wisdom. Mel Robbins is another good one. And then honestly, as far as like, I don't know if this is raising my leadership lid, but I spend a lot of time, maybe not every day, but probably 4 or 5 days a week. I do a lot of journaling and reflecting. You know, in leadership, I'm not perfect. I don't think anybody out there is. And I like to reflect back on decisions that I've made, conversations that I've had, and really unpack how we got there, what could be changed in the future, so that when I have another interaction with somebody or when it's time to make another important decision, I've actually learned from the decisions that I've made in order to build upon them to be better in the future. And so when we're in leadership and we have the job of leading others and making others better, it's really important that we hold space every single week, as often as we can, to sit and reflect with how we got where we're at, who we are as individuals, where our weak spots are, and be fanatical about putting a plan together to patch up those weak spots. Otherwise, what's gonna happen is the people who have trusted us are gonna be collateral damage to the work that we choose to ignore. So Ryan Holiday, Mel Robbins, and a lot of journaling is what I do right now for my own personal development. All right, so another question I get all the time is really, it's kind of a basic one, but it's like, how do you like get started? Like, how do you get into momentum when you don't feel like doing anything? And so the example that I'm thinking of here is like, let's say that you come back from a long holiday weekend and it's Monday morning and your task list, your inbox, your text messages, it's like overwhelming, right? And you don't really know where to start. And so the first thing that I always do is distraction free. I don't react or respond to anything until I've outlined every single thing that I need to do, right? It could be as small as respond to Jeff. It could be as big as make sure I book this meeting, right? But everything I need to do, I list out, right? Then from there, I'm actually prioritizing what is urgent and important, right? Like this needs to get done today. Like I've pushed this off for 4 days, has to get done today. And what could roll over to another day if necessary. So there's a range of urgent, important, like has to get done today. And then there's, bottom of the range, which is could get pushed off to tomorrow. And honestly, there's some tasks on that list that if I never did them, nobody would ever know, right? Like, design a new logo for my Facebook group, right? Like nobody's gonna know the implications of that if it doesn't get done, except me. When we're talking about getting into action after, a period of time or an overwhelming list, I'm gonna outline everything that needs to be done. I'm going to categorize like what's urgent, important, what's not. And then from there, I'm actually gonna start by checking off the 2 or 3 most urgent things, because it's going to give me the sense that I've done the heaviest lifting in my day so far. There's a saying out there, I think it's called Eat the Frog, where you do the hard thing first in the day so that everything else you do for the rest of the day, you're like, well, I already did that hard thing, so everything else is easy. So I try to do the 2 or 3 things that are weighing heaviest on me first, and then everything else I do that day, I'm already into momentum. Now, I think it's also important here that we practice mental and emotional discipline. And if we're starting to feel overwhelmed, understand that that is like a manufactured emotion in response to a belief we have about the work we have to do. Now, I'm sort of making a joking comment about this, and this is not to at all diminish any of the work that any of us are doing, but like, unless we're heart surgeons and we're responding to emergency surgery, whether or not we get back to somebody at 11 a.m. or 3 p.m. usually isn't gonna like be a life and death situation. And so if we're feeling overwhelmed with the amount of things we need to do on a daily basis, once we've outlined them, once we've tackled the heaviest things first, if that list is still overwhelming to you, I would ask you, what items on the list need to be done in the next 24 hours? What items need to be done in the next 48, in the next 72, and so on and so forth. And if you have tasks that are really important to somebody, but they're lower on your list, what I'm gonna ask you to do is ask this person for some sort of extension or some sort of permission. Hey Jeff, I know I said I was gonna get you listing mastery content by Wednesday today. I am underwater. Can I send it to you on Saturday? So instead of feeling against the clock, in a non-emergency situation, ask the person who you've made a commitment to if you can put more time on the shot clock. Most of the time the answer is gonna be yes, sometimes it might be no, but at least in your mind, you're not racing against an invisible deadline that really is inconsequential to the task that you're actually doing. In short, when we're talking about getting back into momentum after a period of time, prioritize the tasks, do the hardest ones first, stretch the rest of them out over that work week if you can, and ask for more time if need be from the people who are expecting things from you only if you need it. That's what we're gonna tackle today. And guys, remember, drop your comments below on time blocking, leadership, organizational structure, anything at all that I can answer you around those topics, and I'll make sure to add it to our list for our next Ask Me Anything. Thank you so much. See you at the next one.